Welcome back to a Timey Wimey Pod, where we watch every episode of Doctor Who from 2005 onwards. My name's Rebecca,
I'm Haley.
and today we are discussing Series 3, Episode 13, Last of the Time Lords.
And we have no time to waste, you guys, because we have so much to talk about in this podcast episode. And I'm kind of scared to see how long this will end up being because we have beef, we have bones to pick, and we're going to be talking all about it. But before we do that, we got to talk all about the fantastic facts from this episode.
We do. There's some good ones, I actually. So this episode aired June 30th, 2007. It was written by Russell T. Davies and directed by Colin Teague, except for a few scenes that were directed by Graham Harper, because Colin Teague unfortunately got injured after falling down some stairs. So Graham Harper had to come in and direct a couple scenes with Martha.
That's actually crazy.
I know.
I did not know that.
Me either. And I meant to pay attention to the credits to see if he was credited anywhere, but I forgot. But I'm sure he is. He was on IMDb, so yeah. Leo Jones was supposed to be in this episode. He was supposed to be the one that welcomes Martha back to the UK and introduces her to Tom Milligan.
I kind of wish that happened now.
Me too. Unfortunately, it didn't happen because Reggie Yates, who plays Leo, he had some scheduling conflicts. And then there was a cutout line about what Leo was up to during the year that never was, but it was cut. And I think you briefly see him outside the house when they're all in their kitchen talking, but I'm not completely sure.
I didn't look closely at that scene, so I would have to go back and look and see if he's there.
I thought I saw him, but it was really quick and I couldn't really tell. But just how interesting would it have been to have Leo be the one that welcomes her home, and then she gets to see her brother again for the first time in a year, and then he introduces her to Tom.
That would have been so sweet, and I really, really wish that could have been the case.
There was also going to be a scene where the Master taunts the Doctor and talks about how all of this is his fault because he brought forth the downfall of Harriet Jones, which we talked about in length last week.
Low-key should have kept that in. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's just the truth.
Yeah, Russell cut it because he thought it was too much of a downer for an already kind of downer episode, and they just couldn't really find a place to put it in. And he also was worried that it would be too obscure of a reference for, the casual viewer, but I think it should have been in there, but also you can kind of infer, you can figure it out, he, we talked about this in the last episode, how it's his fault. So even without them spelling it out, people know.
Yeah.
Okay. Today I was just watching this episode, having a good time, taking my little notes, and I was waiting for one really specific scene because I really wanted to talk about this one specific scene. And then the next thing I know, the episode's ending, and I'm like, wait, where was that scene? Where was that scene? Where was that scene? Because, you guys, being an American fan of this show sucks sometimes because there's only two places you can watch this show. You have to have two streaming services to watch Doctor Who. You have to have Disney Plus to watch new episodes, and you have to have Max to watch old episodes. And the version of this episode on Max has so many missing scenes.
So many that I literally have a list of them. There are 6 missing scenes.
I was losing my mind because I was like, wait, there's okay. What? Tell us all the missing scenes.
Okay, so first, the iconic "I Can't Decide" scene where the Master is singing that song and pushing old 10 around in the wheelchair. It's gone. It's not in the episode. Exactly.
Criminal.
And it's so iconic. Why was that cut? Anyways. The next clip that was taken out is a super brief clip, but it's at the very beginning after the title sequence. And it's basically a clip saying planet Earth is closed. That is also not in the episode. And this clip I actually saw for the first time. So, whichever version of this episode I've seen in the past, it didn't have this clip in it. Other things that weren't in this cut was the master in his bathrobe creeping up to Dobby, Francine holding the master at gunpoint at the end, and Martha bringing Professor Doherty flowers. Also, Martha calling Tom Milligan and hanging up and smiling at the end of the episode.
Which is actually an important scene. Like, they actually needed to keep that scene in for future reasons.
Yes, and all of these scenes, it's not like they're deleted scenes. They're literally cut because for some reason they wanted the international broadcast version of this episode to be 47 minutes instead of 55.
Yeah, so here in the US, we can only watch this episode on Max unless you own DVDs or whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't even have the right version. Like, they cut out so much. I really wanted to talk about the scene where Martha gives her flowers and says, yeah, I forgive you, or it's not your, whatever she says. I just watched it, but I already can't remember. And it's just not here. And I was shocked. I was appalled. I was horrified. I rewinded the episode because I was like, did I miss it? Like, did I blink and I wasn't paying attention? No. They just decided to cut it. But I'm really confused because I'm like, okay, I remember the version with all those scenes. So when did I see that? Because I could have sworn Max used to have the correct version, but I don't know anymore. I don't know.
I don't know if it was like the version on Netflix and we both just like remember that, but it's so weird because I just watched this like a year ago.
Yeah, I remember specifically seeing the scene with the flowers a year ago. I specifically remember watching that. And we don't have access to BBC iPlayer here in the US. They won't give it to us. It's really annoying. It makes me really upset that Max doesn't have the real version, the full version of this episode. And it makes me wonder, what else have they taken from us? You know, like, what are we going to come across that has missing scenes or moments? Or what have we already missed? What have we been forgotten? So yeah, that's been my crisis today, my battle, my fight.
Yeah, quite frankly, it is just it's rude. It's rude of Max to do this to us.
Is there anything you want to say about those scenes since we're talking about them?
Sure. Why don't we talk about Tom Milligan? Because what are our thoughts? What are our feelings on Tom Milligan?
I have a lot to say about Tom Milligan. I have a lot of theories, a lot of conspiracies. However, they relate to future episodes. So I will save my conspiracies and my theories and my rants until then. But just looking at Tom in this episode, he's cool. He's there. It's really sweet. Well, not sweet, but he dies to save Martha. And I always wonder, you guys, I have a lot of questions about their relationship, but again, I'm trying to save the rant for the future because it's more relevant then. But I'm always wondering, like, how they got reconnected in this timeline where he doesn't remember her. Like, that's just kind of crazy, kind of interesting.
I think Martha calls him back. I think she calls him back or makes sure she bumps into him or something. But like you, I wonder about like the trajectory of their relationship, and like she remembers but he doesn't. So what is that like for Martha?
But yeah, I love the conversations they have, and I love when she tells them about meeting Shakespeare. That's great. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
And Tom Ellis is cool. I like that actor.
Yeah, and I love her little smile when she calls him at the end of this episode, and her just being happy he's alive.
What do you think about her giving flowers to Miss Doherty?
I think it's really sweet, and I really love that moment. I find it really touching that Martha goes and gives her flowers and is like, I forgive you, Queen. Like, you're good. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I get it. And that's what I really like. And I really liked about the professor's character is that, like, you knew that it was never from her turning them in, was never from a place of like wanting to actually comply, but she was a mother and her son was in danger. She didn't know if her son was alive or not. And so I don't know. I feel like it was a good example to show that when people are like pushed to extremes, some people, that's all they can do is turn others in so that their loved one, they can find out what happened to them. And I just find
Yeah.
it very realistic.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's definitely realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's really sweet for Martha, even though she knows that she doesn't remember and that none of that technically happened. I think it's really sweet that Martha's like, it's not your fault. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
understand. And yeah, just giving her that kind of peace, even though she doesn't remember, so maybe she doesn't need it, but maybe she does. Maybe there's some part of these, there has to be something in all of these people where they kind of
Yeah.
just like have something. And I actually do. I feel like that's kind of proven later on, but we'll save it. Yeah.
So we kind of dove headfirst into this, talking about this episode.
Yeah. Let's go back a little
So
bit.
let's go back to kind of the beginning. And I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on this episode? Because people have many thoughts regarding this episode. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I sure have thoughts. I overall do really enjoy this episode. I love the concept. I love the time jump. I remember like the first time watching it, seeing like 1 year later, like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy. A year's passed. And like, I love alternate history, alternate timelines. So seeing this
Yes.
like alternate version of Earth is really cool. I have a lot of notes about the things they've mentioned that I want to talk about. It's a great episode for Martha. This is, you guys, we've been talking about it all season. Things keep getting worse for Martha. And this is really, this is it. It was all leading
Mm-hmm.
to this, to her having to walk the entire earth by herself for a year, seeing humanity and the earth destroyed.
She literally went across radiation zones in Europe and she walked across the United States, which, for any non American people listening into this podcast who aren't familiar with how insane saying something like that is, like, America is huge. It takes days to get, there's multiple states in our country that it takes days to get across
Oh yeah.
traveling by car. So her walking, don't know how she did it. That was so insane. But yeah, she went through so much. And like
Mm-hmm.
you said, she saw the world destroyed and the rockets and the shipyards and people basically being slaves and people being murdered by the Toclafane. Like, I don't even know the words. The ultimate thing for Martha this
Yeah.
season.
And then it all gets reversed. So it's like it never
Yeah.
happened, except for her and her family, who are stuck with all this trauma and literally not a single soul they can talk to about it. I really want to listen to the Big Finish audios about the year that never was.
There's Big Finish audios about the year that never was.
Mm-hmm.
I need to listen to those.
I know, me too. My biggest problem with this episode is everything with the doctor.
That's valid.
Because one, I think just having the doctor as an old man and then as an old small man is boring. It's
It
boring.
is.
Okay? He's just sitting there being old, not doing anything, not really talking a whole lot. And for what? Just so they would have like a convenient reason as to why the doctor hadn't escaped or done something. They could have figured out a way to do that without making David Tennant look 90 years old. You know, there could have been some kind of restraints, something. I just think having those conversations directly with, or version of, David Tennant's doctor and the master would have been far more interesting, because I think those actors play off of each other really well. And I think the conversations they have would have been more interesting when David doesn't have to play silent 90-year-old man who's in a wheelchair.
I agree with you because of all things, of anything whatsoever that could have taken place and happened to the doctor in this episode, they chose to make him Dobby. Why Dobby?
Yeah. Oh, he is so it is so cute. He's so tiny. Also, I love that they
I
have a
know.
tiny pinstripe suit for the tiny daughter. Like the master presumably had that made for him and just had it ready, which is it's just so I don't even know what to say about it. So funny. And then the whole ending. What what are your thoughts on that?
Okay. So I love this episode, okay? Like this
Mhm.
three-parter, I enjoy every time. I eat it
Yeah.
up. However, there's specific moments that I always skip through and also delete from my brain and don't think much about. And one of those scenes is the ending when the doctor becomes himself again but is floating and has like powers. I don't
All
understand it. I
because
don't know
everyone
why.
was thinking really hard. Everyone was just really thinking really hard at the exact same time.
I honestly, there's no words. I have no words because what was that? Why was that the choice? Why was that the choice? Why couldn't the doctor just, I don't know, break out of the cage? Like if he had to be Dobby, why didn't he just break out of the cage and become David Tennant again and literally just take the control from the master's hand? Literally, why does he have to float?
Why did we have to do all of this, you know? Like all of this just to be able to destroy the paradox machine so time could be reversed. Like I feel like we just like this is what we had to do. Martha had to spend an entire year walking around the earth telling people about the doctor for an entire year just so everyone could think really hard at the same time and then he would be back and then they would be able to take over. Like that just feels like so many things. Like I feel like we could have found a better way to do all that.
Yeah, like I guess like everyone thinking the same word kind of breaks the Archangel network. I could
Mhm.
understand that, I guess. Like I won't think much too much about that. But everything else the doctor becomes in this episode, it was a choice. And it's a choice that I wish did not happen.
Him just like floating there and like the wind that comes out of nowhere, but it's like super windy in on this ship. It's crazy. And I think when people criticize Russell T Davies finales, like this is really where it's like, oh yeah, this is you built a lot here, you gave us a lot, and then you wrapped it up in kind of a really silly way.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But also it's so camp. It's kind of
Oh, it
hilarious.
is. It's so ridiculous that it gets to the point where you do accept it all because it is so
Mhm.
camp and it is so extra. But yeah, the conclusion, not what I would have chosen.
Yeah, I agree. Something I want to say, because I know I'm going to be bringing it up on future episodes, is I really hate when the ending kind of takes us back to page one and everything that we just saw happen didn't actually happen and it's okay. I just hate when they make the stakes really, really big and then take it all back. However, I'm okay with it here just because it's like, oh yeah, the master controlling Earth for a year, that is kind of crazy. Like that would be hard for the
Mm-hmm.
show to move on from that and acknowledge it or not acknowledge it. Like that's just such a big thing that would have to be addressed going forward forever with any character the doctor ever met because they would all have this collective trauma of this horrible year where their master ran the earth. And I'm okay with it because there are consequences because Martha
Mm-hmm.
and her family remember. So there are, even though we go back to page 1 and this didn't happen to the whole earth, there are people who remember Martha, her family, Jack. There's other people on that ship. They all remember.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm okay with it here, but there's other times where this show does it where I'm like, okay.
No, I completely agree with you. This episode for sure, like you said, there are consequences and it makes sense in this episode that it would be reversed to page
Mhm.
1 just because of the paradox machine, because the Toclafane were the,
Future
were the
humans.
future humans, and they were coming out to basically kill their ancestors, which was a whole big paradox. So all of this like being cleaned up and the year that never happened like becoming a thing, that tracks. I
Mhm.
don't hate it here. Like I think it works. I think if they kept it, it would have been a little too much just
Yeah.
because of how many people died and what happened to the earth. Other episodes, yeah, I'm with you. Something that I'm like always wondering about, this is so random, but like speaking of paradoxes, why is Jack's reaction to shoot the paradox machine?
I know.
What
I
was
did
that?
find that kind of crazy, especially because, like, it's the TARDIS. Like, you can't just shoot the TARDIS. But
Yeah.
that's Jack. That's Torchwood. They're gonna shoot it.
Yeah, that is true.
Something I always like to think about is what all the other characters we know and love were doing during this year that never happened. Like, what was Sarah Jane's life during this time? What was the Donna and her family's life like?
Oh, we know Donna missed it all. Somehow she missed the entire year the master was reigning over the earth.
She was like, I was scuba diving. Honestly, I think in this timeline, I don't think the nobles lasted very long, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, I would agree with that. As for Sarah Jane, I feel like she would either definitely be in with the resistance or one of the Toclafane got her when she was trying to help someone.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, and the master probably definitely purposely went after her because
Mm-hmm.
he knows who she is. Dang, poor Sarah Jane. Sarah Jane
I
dies in a lot
know.
of alternate timelines. I mean, we don't know for sure she dies here, but there's another one.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's kind of crazy, actually. Another thing that is crazy is that even though there's a whole year that never was, something they did keep was the president of the United States being assassinated.
Oh yeah. No, I do like that's another thing I like. I like that
Mm-hmm.
consequence is still there because that makes things still crazy and people will still remember the crazy prime minister that shot the president or had the president killed or whatever. And it makes sense because we see later on in the show do remember Harold Saxon. But
Mm-hmm.
if they took out that moment, I don't think it would be as rememberable.
A scene at the beginning of this episode, which, I mean, it flops because it doesn't work, but I love it. It's when all the Jones and Jack give each other the signal. The doctor gives
Mm.
them the signal to try to like overtake the Valiant, and I just love that. Like even though it flops because it doesn't work, I love stuff like that. It's such a classic like breakout moment.
Yeah, I do love that scene, even though I'm like, how did y'all even like plan this? But no, I
Mm-hmm.
do. It is great. And I love Jack, his whole talking to Tish and it's like, see if I come here again. Classic Jack. One scene or one moment I really want to talk about is when Tom is talking to Martha at the very beginning and he's like, you're famous. Like, people say you were the only person to make it out of Japan alive. And that line has always just stuck with me. And it's why I love this episode because of all the world building. And I'm like, ooh,
Mm-hmm.
what happened in Japan? Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that is something I also really love about this episode is that like even though we don't see what happened in Japan, there is just so much exposition and there's so much showed in this episode that really builds up just how dire everything is. Like it's not just
Mm-hmm.
we're not just being told as the viewer, we're being shown. And I love how RTD did it. And even though we have our criticisms, like we've already mentioned, that is one thing he did really, really well on, in my opinion, in this episode, was just making this alternate reality so real feeling.
Definitely. We find out that the master had statues of himself put up all over the world and
Mm-hmm.
carved himself into Mount Rushmore, which I want to see that. That's really funny. Also, they have like rockets all over the planet. That's a lot of rockets to build in a year. Like, even though they were using like slave labor and maybe the Toclafane were building the rockets, I don't think they said that, but maybe that's a lot of rockets to build in 365 days.
You're not wrong. Actually, I don't know how they did that because it takes so long to build. Okay, I can't get stuck on this.
Yeah, we can't go. I just wanted to say that, like that. Those are a lot of like again, they were using slave labor, and the entire human race was essentially slaves during this. But that's still a lot of rockets in 365 days.
Oh, it is a lot. You are correct on that. A moment between the master and the doctor that always just like sticks out to me watching this episode is when Saxon is talking to Ten about like basically what happened to you, saying, "Oh, that famous doctor was raging a time war, battling, and he sealed the rift of the Medusa Cascade single handed. And look at him now. How did he ever come to this? Oh, yeah, me." And he just laughs maniacally. I don't know. It's so good. It just
It,
sticks out to
it's
me.
it's great. Yeah. Let's talk about the scene where they take down the sphere or the Toclafane. I remember watching that scene for the first time and just being like, one, first shocked that there was like a face. And then we get
Mm-hmm.
the sky was made of diamonds thing. And you find out that all the Toclafane like share their memories. So they remember Martha because she met the little boy in Utopia and they all share memories. And Martha's reaction is just great. Like Freema really, really carried that moment.
Yeah. Watching that for the first time, honestly, I think it was the first and only time I've ever been like sick to my stomach
Mm,
over a quote unquote villain, because the realization that the Toclafane were the people headed to Utopia and that there were like children in that rocket, I was shocked. And now that I watch it, I feel like it's more obvious now when I rewatch it. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense that the people in the rocket headed to Utopia become the Toclafane. But watching it the first time for me, I just didn't connect those dots. And
hmm
so when I saw that, it just like really affected me, which is interesting. And like I said, I don't think any reveal has been like that since in Doctor Who or any other show. So yeah, it just makes it so much darker and
hmm
disturbing. And at the end of this episode, the doctor mentions that the spheres are trapped at the end of the universe. So all of these future humans are basically trapped as the Toclafane at the end of
Yeah.
the universe, which I'm just like, I don't even know how to process that.
Yeah. That I don't even know how to get into that, but
Mm-mm.
yeah, that is crazy. And when Miss Doherty is like, but why do you do it? Like, why are you killing your ancestors essentially? And it just says, because it's fun, and then laughs like that. Oh, that moment is, yeah,
Yeah.
sickening, just like you said.
Doherty also tells Martha, in this scene that she's heard from other people that Martha has been traveling the world to build this gun, this weapon that would actually kill the master and not allow him to regenerate. Were you bamboozled watching this the first time? Because I believed in this gun for some
I
reason.
was, yeah, because I believed that that is something that unit would do. They would, have this gun to kill a Time Lord just in case they ever needed to. And it made sense to me. And I do find the line at the end really funny when the doctor's like, "You think I would ever ask her to kill? Sir, you asked her to do all this."
No,
Like,
literally.
you know what? I do kind of think you would ask. Or not ask, but you
Like, if
know,
it came to it.
you would turn a blind eye. I kind of think you would. But yeah, I was just as bamboozled as the master.
Okay, we need to talk about Lucy Saxon in this episode. We talked quite a bit about her last week, but I still want to know so much more about her backstory. But I
Me
feel in this
too.
episode, okay, so in The Sound of Drums, she very much was giving evil co-conspirator to the
Mhm.
master. But in this episode, in Last of the Time Lords, she's very much giving force to participate, which is
Yeah.
really interesting, the difference. And she mentions to the doctor that the master took her to the end of the universe, and she says that she saw that nothing mattered, nothing ever mattered. And I feel that really tells and explains why she's so apathetic. And
Mhm.
also, I don't know if you noticed, but in this episode, she does have a black eye.
Oh, I've never really noticed that. Yeah, she's clearly like very much in distress.
Yeah.
Things are not good for Lucy. Like she says, like seeing the end of the universe, it kind of made her go insane, or it kind of broke whatever connection there was with the master, whether that be mind control or whatever. I really would. This is why I wish we knew more about her backstory and like why he chose her, and kind of was there, mind control manipulation involved in the beginning, or maybe there wasn't. I just wish we had those definitive answers,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, the change in this episode is so shocking and painful, and it kind of just all leads to the moment at the end where she shoots him. And I really like that moment, and I really like how Jack calmly like ask her to put down the gun, and she's just very empty, like there's nothing behind those eyes, and she's just like slowly putting down the gun in the background, and Jack is like, you can see like Jack is kind of shook by what happened. But yeah, I do wish we got more from Lucy.
A parallel that I just thought about as we've been talking about Lucy is that the master went insane looking into the time vortex, and Lucy, I don't know if insane is the right word, but she goes into the far future and sees everything dying, and that's
Hmm.
what takes her, like brings her to a little bit of insanity. And it's just interesting, the comparison. The master saw everything and he went insane, and she saw everything dying and she went insane.
Yeah, no, I thought about that too, and I do think that is really interesting, and I do love that like she kind of gets her moment. I love that she's the one that shoots him basically, and that it's
Mm-hmm.
not one of the Joneses, even though they're like execute him, which always kind of gives me a laugh, even though it's not
Yeah.
funny. But
No, literally. I'm
uh,
like, don't blame
mm,
you.
yeah, I'm like, that's you're valid, but don't do it. Okay,
Yeah,
but yeah.
Francine holding him at gunpoint makes
Hmm.
sense, but like you, I'm glad it was Lucy.
Yeah. But yeah, I just think it's really interesting, and I wish they could have spent a little bit more time on like how that relationship happened and what the actual dynamics were. But yeah, and there's a lot in this episode that is just really uncomfortable, like the scene that was cut out of the version that we watched, where he like kind of dances with her for a moment,
Mm-hmm.
and then she's wearing that red dress the whole time, which I love the dress. She looks great, but it's also like
Same.
very uncomfortable that she's wearing the dress, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you think about the scene where Tom takes Martha and they go to that house, and she tells them the story about the doctor, and we hear like this is what she's been doing this whole year?
Well, this is literally the same street, same flats and everything that another episode is filmed in next
Mm-hmm.
season. So it's very, very reminiscent of that for me. But her talking to all of the people again, telling the legend of the doctor so that everyone says the word doctor at the exact same moment. We've already talked about it, but I do like her telling everyone about him.
Mm-hmm.
And I
I love
do
her
like,
speech.
yeah, her speech is really great. And I love like just like the subtleness between her and Tom, but you can tell there's something there.
Mm-hmm. I love how, I forget what she says before, but I love how she says, I know him. I love him. Like the way she says
Mm-hmm.
that is just like so sweet. And like even after all this time and this whole year, I don't know, it is very sweet.
But do you know what's not sweet?
Oh, what?
When the master comes after Martha there, I do have to say, as awful as this scene is where he's like, Martha, come out, it's also hilarious because he just says, I can see you in the highest pitched voice, and he is genuinely so unhinged telling Martha to come out. It's a little iconic, I fear.
There's one actor in this scene. It's the guy who when she comes in, he's like, they say you can kill the master. Can you do it? Can you kill him? Are you gonna kill him? And then when the master shows up, he's like, it's our Lord and Master on the ground with us. He never walks the earth. It's like that actor needed to like calm down. Like
No,
it
literally.
was giving too much. And I love how all the people try to hide her, but they just hide her like on the staircase.
They're like, here, hide under this blanket.
We'll just all cover you and no one will find you right here on these stairs.
Which is, honestly, I want to know why she hid from the master when she wanted the master to bring her up to the Valiant, anyways.
Yeah, I did kind of find that interesting. And you can tell she's really scared in this scene. Like, she can hear
Yeah.
him outside. Like, she is clearly really scared. So maybe that's it. But yeah, it is really interesting. I also think it's interesting how he's about to kill her. And then Tom comes out. So he kills Tom instead. And then he's like, well, the doctor should be here when you die. And it's like, well, you were just gonna kill her, and then I guess you changed your mind. I don't know. That's just kind
Yeah.
of a weird kind of blocking thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is weird for sure. Okay, there is one line that the master says towards the doctor and Martha on the Valiant. In response to Martha not saying a word when she's kneeling in front of him, he says, oh, times of old, doctor. You have had companions who could absorb the time vortex. This one's useless. First of all, she's not useless, but second of all, thank you for mentioning our girl Rose.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got a Rose Tyler reference. She's always going to show up. You can't get rid of her. Yeah, I love this reference because it's like, yeah, Rose did absorb the time vortex, and don't y'all forget about it. Don't y'all forget for one single moment that she did that. Also, for years, I was like, how does he know that? Like, where did he get? Who told him that? And then I realized, like, on a not this rewatch, but a previous one, oh, he overhears them talking about it in Utopia.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that being a revelation is really sad because why did it take me until you just said that?
It's okay. It took me many years as well. I think it wasn't until my last rewatch a year ago where I was like, oh, right.
That's actually hilarious. That, wow, okay.
I love when, they have the whole moment. Everyone says doctor. Also, I really like how Lucy joins in on that whole thing. I really like that
Mm-hmm.
moment. But I love how it gives the master, like, just crashes out after this, and Ten has to hold him. And then he says that he forgives him. And this whole episode, the doctor's like, I only have one thing to say to you. And the master's like,
Yeah.
no, you don't. And then you find out the whole time he was just going to say he forgives him. What do you think about that? Because I have mixed feelings about it. I think it's a great scene when you're just looking at it from a scene level, and it is like, whoa, you don't expect that to be the thing that the doctor has to say. And then I also feel like it just feels like I forgive you is just kind of a crazy thing to say. Like, I don't know if
Yeah.
you're the one that gets to forgive the master for all of this that happened.
Yeah, like sure you forgive him for turning you into Dobby, okay, but like you can't really forgive him for murdering 10% of the population and for destroying the lives of future humans and just every twisted thing. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to get really upset if I continue talking about
And
this, but yeah, he's not the one to say I forgive you.
yeah, and it happens, more things happen later on where it just seems like he is willing to give, this version of the doctor, the 10th doctor, gives the Johnson master a lot of breaks. Like all the things that the master's done, he just kind of forgives him. And I do understand it because I think he is so desperate to have another Time Lord, and
Mm.
he really cares about the master and wants to help him. And I think there's always going to be a part of the doctor, at least there was for a while, that really thought the master could change.
I would agree with that. I would agree that he doesn't want to be the last Time Lord. He's carried that weight for so long. So I completely understand that and understand him wanting to believe the best in the master, but it's complicated and complex, you know?
Hmm.
Okay, I have a very sincere question. Okay? It's kind of a rant because the doctor tells the master that, hey, you know what? I will keep you in the TARDIS, have somebody to take care of. But it's like, where would the master be in the TARDIS? Jail? The dungeon? Like, how would that even work? Because if the master got access to the main console room and all of time and space, like, I just want to know, like, why does the doctor think he has the capability of keeping the master locked up? Like, how would that work?
You know what? I've never thought about that, but you're completely right. And yeah, there is no way that the doctor would have actually been able to contain the master. However, I do desperately crave a season with the master kind of essentially in the companion role, and they're like traveling in the TARDIS, and there's like this really, and we almost got it. We almost got it. We came so close later on, and we kind of got it, but not to the full extent. But yeah, I think it would have been interesting to kind of see the doctor essentially trying to rehab the master. But yeah, it logistically wouldn't have worked. Oh, I love the scene where they like get transported off the Valiant for a second and they're on Earth. And I just love when the doctor is saying, like, all this time, like, I know you and I know you're not going to destroy yourself. So you can't destroy Earth. And I just really like that moment of the doctor being like, I know you. I know exactly who you are. And then that kind of leading to later on when the master gets shot and he refuses to regenerate, which is such a painful scene. Like that, I love that scene so much. When I was watching the episode today, I rewinded the scene so I could watch it again. I love when the master says, I'm dying, then the doctor says, don't be stupid. It's a bullet, regenerate. But what do you think about that scene?
I think it is absolutely diabolical that this is how the master went out. Like he really said to 10, I am not living with you in the
Mm-hmm.
TARDIS. But it's emotional because at the end of the day, they are the ultimate, most complicated, fascinating case of frenemies.
Yeah.
Truly. And I agree with you. Like, the doctor doesn't want to be the last of the Time Lords. And I think, too, like, we've talked about how, this was kind of all Tin's fault. So I think he's really taking that to heart, too, with the master dying. And so I think that's like another factor on why he is so torn up about it. And I think, too, when you have hope for someone changing their ways and then they just like go out and die. Like that's got to be really really painful. And just with all the other loss the doctors had, like he was responsible for like Gallifrey burning all of the Time Lords and the Daleks. And so he just has the weight of all of that. And so it makes sense to me why he would be upset, even though the master is like absolutely horrendous and insane. It is sad. It's sad to watch.
And we see him talking to Jack, and he says, maybe it's time to change. I have someone I have to take care of now, or whatever he says. And I think maybe he even sees it as his penance for what happened in the Time War and what he did to Gallifrey. Like, he destroyed all of them, but maybe he can help, the last one, the master. And we see that he's willing, to give up the traveling, give up the freedom, and just deal with the master. And I love how John Sam says, "You're just gonna keep me like a pet." Like, he delivers that line really great. But yeah, it's a really heartbreaking performance from David, and I just love how he keeps saying like, just regenerate, and kind of the cry he lets out at the end while he's just like holding him on the floor while everyone's watching. It's really devastating, but it's a great moment.
For sure. All right.
Is it time? Are we finally gonna talk about it?
Yes. Okay. Guys, I have wanted to talk about this since the Doctor dances.
You guys, Jack is the face of Bo. He's the face of Bo.
And oh my gosh, the first time I watched this scene, girl, I screamed at my screen.
I screamed and I think I cried.
Yeah, I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And then you realize Jack was there for Nina Rose's first date.
He was there for New Earth. It was him that gave the message of Yana. And it's one of the best moments, I think, of the entire show, because it gives us, Jack is this immortal being essentially, and it gives us a little bit of finality. Like, we know where he ends up, we know what happens to him, and it gives us some answers about the face of Bo. It was just like, the face of Bo is so old, like no one knows who or what he is. And I do wish in an alternate universe where things were different and certain people didn't do horrible things, I wish we kind of got to see more of that progression and how Jack ended up as the face of Bo. But we'll never see that. But at least we kind of have this, and we can kind of put pieces together in our minds. But yeah, I love this. It's one of the best reveals of the show. It's one of the best scenes. The Doctor and Martha's reactions are incredible. I only wish we got a moment of Rose's reaction to all of this.
Yes.
But we were robbed, so it's fine.
We were robbed with that. But yeah, their reactions are great.
I also love how in this scene before the reveal, the Doctor even like asks Jack, or not really ask him, but he's like, "I'm okay with it now. Like, I would love it if you came." And Jack is like, "I gotta go back to Torchwood. Gotta go back to my spinoff show."
Yeah, which is kind of sad because I love this trio so much. We talked more about that last week. But I get it. Jack has some growth in that area, and he's like, I have responsibility. And he does ask the Doctor, like, can he change back from being immortal? And the answer is no.
Yeah. No, sorry. Yeah, and just seeing that scene of him running away and heading towards like that tower, and Martha and the Doctor just watching and being shook. It's such a good scene. I love it so much.
Do you know what I also love in this episode? I love Martha's departure, as bittersweet as it is.
Me too. Oh, me too.
I completely support her in leaving when she did, and I
Oh,
really
yeah.
feel it really shows her growth as a character.
Yeah, I just love everything about this. And it really shows how strong she's become and how resilient she is. And I love how when she says, you know what, I spent a lot of time thinking I was second best, but you know what,
Yes.
I am good. And you know what, you are good, Martha Jones. You deserve the
Yeah.
world. You saved the world. And you deserve all the flowers. And then I love how she leaves and comes back and really says what she needs to say. And I love the speech she makes about her friend Vicky and how she just says, "This is me getting out because I'm not going to waste all these years pining after you because I won't be able to find someone else or do anything else." And I love that realization for her and doing this for herself. You know, she knows she has to
Mhm.
leave. It's not just because she can't leave her family and someone needs to take care of them. She's also leaving for herself, and I love that.
Me too. I just love Martha Jones so much. She was done so dirty so many times this season,
Yeah.
but she truly is such an underrated companion, and I have to give her her flowers because they are due.
They are so due, and I love that. You know, this isn't the last we see of her. We get a little bit more, and I can't wait to talk about that later.
Me too. That will be so fun to talk about. And yeah, I love that she gives him her cell phone and is like, "This isn't the last time I'm seeing you."
Yeah, you'll see me again, Mister. Like she's so great. Like that whole scene of them
Mhm.
in the TARDIS is so good. Also, this is unfortunately where the Doctor now has his hand just in the TARDIS with him. That damn
Yeah,
hand.
the damn hand.
What do you think about the like very short little scene where the Doctor's like outside the Joneses' house by the TARDIS and Francine kind of looks at him through the window and they share this like very like small smile. What do you think about that scene?
I think that it was like Francine being like, "Thank you for fixing this." But I don't know the true meaning because there was no apology between Francine and the doctor or Francine and Martha. So is she grateful Martha is home? Is she grateful everything is reversed? Is she grateful because she already knows Martha isn't going to travel with the doctor anymore?
Yeah, it is so interesting because after everything that happens, it is kind of like, oh, Francine, you were kind of right. I mean, everything you did was wrong, and some
Mhm.
of
Oh yeah.
this maybe kind of sort of was partly your fault working with Saxon and his team. But I think that kind of smile is an acknowledgement of, you know, the Doctor isn't this horrible, terrible person that she originally thought. I mean, part of that is still true, but you know, she spent a whole year with him on the Valiant and she saw probably a lot, and she saw that at the end of the day he did fix things for them and they are all still together. They're all safe now, but yeah, so I do just kind of like that silent acknowledgement between the two of them.
And then we get a very brief scene where a hand with red fingernails picks up the master's ring.
Oh, yes. If I had $1 for every time.
No, literally, literally. And then as the doctor's just, in his TARDIS, musing over what he's going to do next, the Titanic crashes into the TARDIS.
Classic. Classic.
Classic Doctor.
Yeah, classic. Who is the star of the show?
Okay, I have to give it to Martha Jones. She literally walked the earth for the Doctor. Criticism aside of everyone saying the word doctor at the same moment to reverse everything, she was a true legend. Like
Oh, yeah.
literally a legend in this episode. I love her so much. I'm gonna miss Martha Jones.
Ugh, I miss Martha Jones every day. Martha, please
Mm-hmm.
come home. Yeah, no, it can't be anyone else other than Martha.
Mm-mm.
She really went through it. She did the most. No one has had to do the things that she has had to do. And she saved the world and the universe. And thank you, Martha Jones.
Martha Jones, you are a star.
Mm-hmm. What is the heart of this episode?
Good grief. Where do I even begin?
there's so much.
Okay. A few different things are the heart of this episode. One, again, don't trust random men with a fob watch.
So true. Yeah.
Yeah. Enough said for that one.
If you're going to burn a Time Lord's body, make sure maybe just stick around. Make sure no one somehow shows up and picks things up. You know, just stick around. Make sure everything is really gone. And maybe take off any jewelry they had beforehand.
So true. And lastly, if you get a call up to work for a guy with the name of Lazarus or Richard Lazarus or someone called Harry Saxon, just like don't answer the phone. Don't work for random men that are really creepy.
If you're Tish and you know that you're just really unqualified for these really crazy jobs, but you get them anyways, be cautious. Be cautious. Do we have any reviews from the past?
Yes, we do. All right. So this first review is from IMDb. It was written on July 14th, 2008 by the user Daz Thompson. And they wrote that this is the only finale that on the first watch I actually believed the Doctor could not win. It was not as predictable as the others and just seemed to be the most dramatic and personal battle the Doctor has ever faced. It took an entire year to defeat the Master, giving him credibility as a true evil force. The acting was brilliant and it was full of surprises. Jack being the face of Bo, Martha leaving the Doctor, the wife killing the Master, and him choosing not to regenerate. It was a 3-part finale that works so well because it doesn't need thousands of aliens, lots of weapons, tons of fighting, etc. It's a dramatic personal struggle for the Doctor, which makes this the best finale of the 3 so far.
Oh, I would have to. I mean, I agree with what they said. However, I disagree that this is the best finale of the 3 so far. I think it's the worst finale of the 3 so far. And I really like this episode. It's definitely the least painful of the 3, I'll tell you that. But the other 2 are really strong episodes that are better. And I think just overall have better conclusions. But again, despite all the flaws, I really like this episode.
This next review was written on July 8th, 2007 by the user Quip Sturmel, and they wrote saying, "This was not the best season overall for the new Doctor Who series, and it was topped off with an awful finale. I liked the Johnson Master arc, but how he was defeated was just silly. The Dobby Doctor was also just embarrassing.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, I would have preferred they spread the arc in bits over 2 seasons and then take the time to actually round it out in a satisfying and feasible way."
I just wonder what they mean by that, but
yeah,
I don't really have any problems with the overall arc. I actually really like the arc, and I think it's set up really well. I just don't think the conclusion is that good.
I agree with you. This reviewer continues to say that it almost seemed like the writers realized that it was 5 o'clock and tossed in the first ending they could think of. Frankly, sprinkling some fairy dust and then saying everything is okay just doesn't cut it. One of the few things I did like about this episode was Martha's decision to leave. 2 out of 10.
Fair enough.
All right, this last review, I'm going to be reading a few excerpts from it because I just really liked the way this person worded some things. I thought it was kind of funny. So this is also from IMDb by the user Alaric3, and they wrote on July 1st, 2007, saying, "This script is a disgrace, but the performances are for the most part excellent." And They say that the over-the-top campy comedy of the aged doctor being made to live in a doghouse tent with a water bowl, and the musical number straight from Rocky Horror Picture Show, and Martha's family being maid service and janitor corps.
I I don't know. I kind of love it. I mean, not the fact that Martha's family is like held captive, but everything else is just it's just camp. It's great.
I agree. They also said that they called it last episode that Martha would leave because they were watching it with a friend, and they asked, how does she even come back from this?
Yeah, it would almost be weird if Martha stayed after this and she was like, "Yeah, let's go." Like there's no way she can stay after this.
No. And lastly, this excerpt from this review. There's so much good in this review, by the way. But this last excerpt I'm gonna read just is my favorite. They say the doctor was seriously revived by a psychic chanting of his name to be made invulnerable and able to fly. He's not Tinkerbell.
That's amazing.
Yeah, this is a great review. Like I said, there's a lot to it, and we've been talking for quite a while, but this is an interesting episode for sure. Don't love the conclusion. Love other parts of the episode, though.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else we need to say before we go?
Just that next week we will be talking about our series 3 wrap up, which is mind blowing.
So crazy. Make sure you listen. The wrap ups are like my favorite episodes. We're going to be ranking the series, talking about our favorite moments, what worked, what didn't. And there's a lot to say about series 3. Lots of highs, lots of lows. And yeah, the wrap up episodes are my favorite. So it's going to be fun.
So with all of that said, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at timeywimeypod.
And email us anything and everything to timeywimeypod@gmail.com. And if you feel so obliged, leave us a little review.
And we will talk to you guys next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Ta-ra.